On this week's episode of the WNP podcast, immovable objects versus unstoppable forces. Which do you prefer? Episode 184 of the WNP podcast. I'm your host, Mike Mitchelson, and joining me today, as always, my co-host, Chase Crawshaw. Chase, how are you on this lovely Wednesday afternoon?
I'm doing swell. Thank you for asking. Got the sun shining through my window here. It's a welcome sign. I mean, as we're sitting here, this is the last week of March, starting to get to April. Looking super forward to the nice weather we should slowly be getting here, hopefully. We got a big week next week that I'm really looking forward to as well. So things are looking up. Mike, how are you?
Not too shabby. I am dying for some nice weather. I mean, when you give me 70 degrees in early March, you get me out to the driving range, and then you decide to just hit me with 2 straight weeks of cold, it doesn't really make me a happy guy. But as we start to continue to move forward, we're looking in the 50s for the rest of the week, and then next Friday it's supposed to be 60 here. I can only imagine what it'll be in Indianapolis because we are headed down there. It's going to be a fun time. We leave next Wednesday. I guess we should probably figure out how we're doing all that. I assume we're taking 2 cars, so I'm assuming you and I will probably drive together, or I can drive solo and you can go and sit in the back seat with John.
Yeah, I mean, if we're taking 2 cars, then definitely will not be going 1 and 3. That would be very, very dumb.
Not taking a back seat?
No chance.
Okay, fair enough. Well, on today's episode, we're going to be talking pretty briefly on some of the new NFL rule changes, kind of give our opinions on that. And then, Chase, I do kind of want to talk about a prospect in this upcoming draft class. There's been some hype around him recently because of a pro day. So kind of just quickly want to mention him because I don't think we mentioned him in our prior episodes. So we'll do that. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about the defensive linemen in this class. When it comes to the defensive line class, we're looking mostly interior, but we're going to be talking about some true defensive edges as well. Not a true pure speed edge rusher, but some guys that can kind of put their hand in the dirt, play like a 3-4 edge rusher or like a 4 technique, something like that. But it's going to be a good episode. We are going to be doing our top 6, but before we get to that, let's talk about some new NFL rules. First up, let's talk about the new kickoff rule. We're going, who was it that implemented it? Was it the XFL who first did it? The AAF?
Yeah, it was the XFL, the first one to do it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the new kickoff rule? Kind of give us a brief synopsis, too, on how it's going to work in the NFL.
So it's a lot. Like, when they first explained to you, it's like, yeah, we're going to throw all this information at you. I had to start to sit down and, like, fully read a couple articles, watch videos, make sure I 100% got it. But essentially, what's happening is the kicker basically gets a running start, and the opposing teams, like the opposing rushers and the blockers will kind of line up essentially face to face, and nobody can move until the receiver gets the ball. And if the ball falls short, I think it's of the 35-yard line, then it's considered as an out of bound kick, and then it gets placed that way, just like as it would, previously in the NFL for kickoffs. And then if it goes for a touchback, it ends up at the 25, if I'm not mistaken. And then as long as it's caught within that range between the 35 and then the end zone, then it's eligible for the kicker to take it back. So it's like I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to encourage, being able to take back some kicks for, because right now, maybe 10% kickoffs feel like they're taken out. I don't know the exact number, but that's just kind of what it feels like. I know they're trying to encourage that while still avoiding guys getting hurt, but I don't know. I still think that this is going to be a really strange year one of it. I really don't know 100% how to feel, especially with the new onside kick rule with it, where you can only go for onside kicks in the fourth quarter, and you have to tell the officials and the team beforehand that you're going for it, so you can't just like do a surprise onside kick. It takes out so much creativity. Like it's just it's really I really hate the onside kick rule. The other rule, it's just I don't know. I kind of gotta wait and see how it is in a full NFL game.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm pretty indifferent when it comes to the actual kickoff, but the onside kick, don't love the fact that you can't do any sneaky type plays there. But yeah, I mean, the kickoff has been so stagnant and so, unwatchable because, I mean, there's no reason to watch it because all of them are touchbacks for a while now. So switching it up a little bit, I don't mind. And then I know everyone's going to be happy too with the fact that we're not going to have players blazing down, 18 miles per hour down the field, get a 40-yard head start and be able to clobber a dude, where these guys will start 5 yards apart. And then once the receiver actually gets the ball, then they can start to move. So the most you're getting, if you get a great jump and an offensive or a returning blocker misses his block, the most you're getting is like maybe 20 yards of actually being able to get up to him and hit him. So there's some extra safety added to it, which is cool. But we'll see how it plays out when we actually see it in the NFL this upcoming season. Let's now talk about the drop tackle, or the hip drop tackle, I should say, getting banned. And it's going to be a 15-yard penalty if any players do hip drop tackle someone. And there was a lot of outrage on the defensive side of the ball. People saying, well, just get rid of tackling in general. And when are we going to see the flags come out when it comes to, playing flag football rather than tackle football? What are your thoughts overall on this tackle ban?
It's making it harder for the defenders to play this game, man. Like, every rule, every year, I should say every year, there seems to be a new rule that is making the game harder and harder for defenses to play. And I don't know why the NFL wants to do this so bad. It's supposed to be a strategy based game. It's supposed to be a chess match. Like football is supposed to be. You have plays. You're only running a play really for 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, and then there's 40 seconds between plays. That's why it's strategy. It's trying to set up. So now eliminating all these different ways that a defender can potentially take down someone running the ball. It's just. It makes it so it's just an offensive show. Like now, it's tackling guys is going to be so much more difficult. There's going to be so many more penalties. The scores are going to be higher, which, yeah, I mean, seeing a 35-28 game might be fun. But I also really enjoy like when the Lions played the Chiefs beginning of the year. It was a 21-20 game. Like I love that game. That was a ton of fun. The Lions had to beat an offensive juggernaut by playing, pretty well defensively as well as generating some offense too. Like that was great, but trying to make this game so much harder for the defenders, like those types of games are going to start going out the window. The only low-scoring games are going to be the games where this horrible offense is playing. So I really don't like this rule. I really don't like all these rules that defenders are getting added to them because it's just making the game so much harder for them.
Yeah, I don't love it either, and I think they did this obviously for some injury issues. I know Mark Andrews, he got injured off of a hip drop tackle. But I think the big problem is now what are defenders going to be doing? And I saw a tweet about it, and it was just a video of Kirby Joseph going at TJ Hawkinson's knee. And then I don't remember who the other tight end was, but Kirby Joseph caught his knee as well. And it's like, this is going to be the only way you're able to tackle tight ends and running backs on screen plays and stuff, because if you're not able to do a hip drop like tackle, it's going to be a little tougher to go against those really big guys when you can't, when you're 5'10", 5'11", 180 pounds, you're going to be going up against a Brock Bowers who is 6'3", 245. You're not going to have a great time. So it's going to be more diving for knees. And I would say that diving for knees has taken out more guys than the hip drop tackle. So don't love that. And then kind of to your point, when you were talking about how it's gotten so hard, the game's gotten so hard for defensive players, I'm pretty sure Tom Brady has a quote out there from like a year ago where he talked about how easy the game got, because when he was young, an early player for the Patriots, if he threw a suicide pass right down the middle to a slot guy and he gets blown up, then Tom said he would get his ass chewed out. Now, I mean, all these guys are protected on different things where they can't get blown up anymore. You can't go for upper body anything. You got to, focus on purely the waist. And he just talked about how the game got so simple and so easy for the offense, which is not ever what you want to hear when you have a game that's supposed to be head-to-head offense versus defense.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm obviously not sitting here rooting for guys to get hurt, being like, yeah, awesome, this guy got absolutely blown up, murdered center of the field, Vontaze Burfict style, and now he's dead. Like I'm not rooting for that, but like there's got to be that physicality involved in the game because that's how the game's been played for so long. That's how you can stop offensive players, and it stops them from just like doing dumb things that they know they're going to be able to get away of, instead of kind of keeping them in check, keeping them accountable. So just it's becoming flag football. That's what it really feels like to me.
Yeah, we're going to get Sarcastaball out here. Hopefully we can get Randy from South Park to what he did. Oh, no, it was CeeLo Green who sang the anthem.
Yeah, all of his hit song.
Yeah, with all of his hit songs. So, Sarcastaball coming soon. It's going to be a fun time. But, Chase, I do want to move on, talk about a quarterback that has been getting a ton of hype. And, no, it's not J.J. McCarthy, even though J.J. McCarthy has been skyrocketing up the draft board since we've talked about the quarterback class. It's actually Joe Milton, another former U of M player, transferred, went to Tennessee. He had his pro day today. Everyone was raving about some of the athletic feats he was able to accomplish, a 4.55 40-yard dash. He's got an absolute cannon for an arm. We all know that. And I don't recall if we even talked about him in our quarterback rankings because neither you or I had him in our top 8. So I kind of wanted to just quickly mention him, talk about him, and I think that when you come to pro days and when you come to the combine, I mean, that is the Joe Milton show. This guy is an absolute supreme athlete that is going to show out anytime he's in that type of situation. But when it comes to the actual football field and playing, trying to diagnose defenses, I guess that's kind of where we had him drop off of our board.
That's exactly it. This is the exact environment that he's going to thrive in, where there's no pressure, there's no game situation. It's just him being a little athletic and launching a ball. That's awesome. I mean, that's what he does. He's athletic and he can launch a ball. But when it comes down to reading a play and like trying to properly evade defenders and throwing into traffic and just game situation awareness, like that stuff, that's where it all falls apart. Like I'll never forget the game. When I said I'm never gonna forget the game, but I already forgot who they're playing. But I remember the play where he was driving down the field with Tennessee. There's no time on the clock as the play was going on, and they needed to score to win, and he just ran the ball out of bounds. He could have tried to throw the ball, could have tried to power through it, but instead he just ran out of bounds, avoided the tackle, game was over. And like that's the type of thing that's gonna make him just very limited in the NFL. He just doesn't have anything else other than the pro day traits that you're going to see. So people that fall in love with pro days, like you got to be careful because this is a prime example of a guy who's going to disappoint.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing is there is some things that NFL players can improve on at the next level. I'm not sure that how quickly you can process defenses gets much better outside of actual playtime, and Joe Milton is like a 5th or 6th year senior who's had at least a decent chunk of playtime throughout his college career. So if we haven't seen it up to this point, I think he's sitting at 24 years old now, then I'm not too sure it's going to be working out to the best ability there. So we'll have to wait and see potentially where he could go. I don't know. Chase, kind of what are your thoughts on that? I'm thinking probably day 3 sometime. I don't think he's going to drop to like the 7th round, maybe not even the 6th round. Maybe he gets picked up like in the 5th. What are your thoughts on that?
Quick, Mike, what the hell just played in the background?
That was ESPN. I was pulling up Joe Milton's stats to see how many games played he had, but I couldn't get games played. I could only get attempts.
So I would have to guess, day 3. If I'm going to draft and take a shot based on the traits, like, yeah, maybe I'll take him in like the 6th round. I mean, where he's currently sitting ranked for me is it is the end of the 6th round. So I guess I'd be I'd be fine taking him there just to be like, yeah, maybe, you never know, I guess. But it's just so unlikely. There's just so many other guys that I'd rather take a chance on.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's talk about these defensive linemen. What are your thoughts overall on the class before we actually get into rankings?
So I think it's not bad. There's some guys that I definitely do like. I think in terms of every down effectiveness, maybe there's, maybe there's 3, 4 guys I think that could be every down guys in the NFL. The other guys might be a little more situational, but there definitely is some talent here. There are some traits that are really interesting. There are some guys, that maybe lower in the draft are worth taking a chance on just because of some traits and some, history. But yeah, as a whole, I would say it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I mean, last year we saw an absolutely crazy defensive line class with the likes of Jalen Carter headlining it. You get Kalijah Cansey, Mozzie Smith, and then a couple other, guys such as Keanu Benton, Kobe Turner, Brian Brissy. You had a nice class there with some really high-end top-end guys, and then there was some decent depth before you started questioning if guys were, even going to be rotational pieces. Whereas here, I feel like it drops off a little bit quicker, and the top of the class maybe not as good as the Jalen Carters, but we can discuss that going forward. So let's start it off. We're going 1 through 6 here. Go ahead, give me your first guy.
So my number one, I do have Byron Murphy, defensive lineman out of Texas. He is currently sitting as a very end of day one pick for me. So yeah, when it comes to Murphy, I mean, a bit undersized, 6 foot 297 is not really what you're looking for in a prototypical D lineman, of course, but otherwise, and despite the size, he still has pretty solid hands. He has, decent length, decent wingspan. It's all stuff that, despite his height, is probably, above. I guess the ratio wise, that's the right word. It's above the ratio that is kind of average for that size. He has, a great athletic profile. He is someone that can, really do damage all over the line. I think he is useful interior. I think he's useful on the outside. I mean, he is a very high end pass rusher. He's a very high end run defender. I mean, he does just like everything like really well. I mean, really, all I'm gonna say is, in terms of development, just keep on working on your tackling technique. It's solid, but can always improve. I mean, like D linemen, it can be an issue for them just in general sometimes. But so he can definitely improve there, and then just kind of keep on working on how you're going to figure out winning those blocks at the pro level with that size. Which I don't think he should have too much of an issue, just because I think he is so talented. But I think there will be a little bit of growing pains in terms of figuring out, okay, this is how I'm going to have to adjust here and there, because those offense linemen in the pros are a little bit bigger, a little bit better, a little bit faster, stronger, all of that. So I do really like Murphy's game. I think he's someone that should come in and be able to make an impact day one.
Yeah, I like Byron Murphy a lot as well. He is also my number one. I actually have him as a top 16 talent in my grading system, but this is going to be another one of your Kalijah Canseys. I mean, we saw him last year. He's going to be a smaller guy coming in only at 6'5". I think it's 297. Sorry, not 6'5". 6 foot and a half.
297.
Yeah. So he measured in at the combine. He got that half inch, 297, and he's going to be your elite athlete with the smaller frame. I mean, I think he's got great speed, great burst, great lateral agility. He had elite college production, and I thought he was terrific when it came to using his hands when it actually came to the pass rush. I thought he did a great job of, swiping away defenders' arms or getting his hands on the offensive linemen before they got their hands on him. I thought he did a great job actually utilizing his hands. The big thing is, because his smaller nature, he can get bullied at times. He can get completely washed out of a play now and then. His anchor is not good enough to take on double teams in the run game. And that's kind of where he has to use his IQ and be able to use that plus his lateral agility to kind of climb across the offensive line to get to those holes. And then I think one thing that he can work on, whereas size, it's really hard to work on that. One of the things I think he can get way better at is just his timing off the offense or off the line. I thought he had terrific burst, but I felt like it came delayed. I felt like he waited half a second after the ball was snapped to actually get off the line, whereas some of these other guys, that wasn't an issue. I felt like if he just improves his timing a little bit, I mean, he's going to be able to blow by offensive linemen just because of that burst and speed. So I think this is a really talented player, and if it comes down to it where the likes of Amarius Mims, Talise Fuaga, they're off the board, and the Bengals are sitting there at 18, your best offensive lineman on the board is like Tyler Guyton, I think I'd rather Byron Murphy than the likes of that. So,
yeah, I don't hate that analysis. I mean, when it comes down to him being a first round guy for me, it's kind of how you said top 16 is where you have him. So I mentioned it in previous shows, mentioned it in previous years, but I have it as my highest grade generational, which nobody's there. I haven't had anybody there yet. Then I have first overall worthy, top 5, top 16, top 32. So he falls in the top 32. So basically, all it's saying is as long as somebody who I don't have, as long as, like if I rank somebody's top 16 player or higher, as long as they don't go above him, I think it's a perfectly fine pick. It's basically what that means, if that makes sense. So if the Bengals take him at 18 the way things sit right now, then I mean that would definitely be a non-issue. And I do think he's someone that should come in and basically any scheme make a day one impact. So I think that could be a solid pick.
For sure. All right, let's talk about your number 2.
Number 2, I have Jer'Zhan Newton. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, he also goes by Johnny, so we could just go Johnny Newton.
I never even saw one by Johnny, to be honest, but works for me. Yeah, Johnny Newton, it'll be. So I have Johnny Newton coming in as a higher end day 2 pick. Someone that should go early second round. If he snuck into the first round, I wouldn't be super surprised, but like I think there's other guys that I would still prioritize over. Where some of the issues kind of lie, just right off the bat with him is, the measurables. 6'2" is obviously bigger than Byron Murphy. 304 is still obviously bigger than Byron Murphy, but percentile wise for all draft prospects, and I don't remember how many years it is, but 31% for hands, 30% for arms, and then his wingspan is only 5%. So those measurables are pretty small, so it's going to make him, like if he's engaged in a block, might be a little bit tougher to reach out and grab a guy, like a rusher. But despite that, still has enough talent, enough awareness to do his best to make up for those deficiencies. He has really great feet, nice hands, fantastic rush abilities, both on in the pass and the run game. I think he is someone who is very reliable in both those aspects, and he's got a really strong ability to be able to shed blocks too. I mean, it's sorry, my computer's freaking out on me. I just randomly lost my grades there, but we're good now. So sorry about that. But yeah, no, he does block sheds incredibly well. Just a really, really nice, well-rounded guy who I think can come in and should be able to come make an impact day one. Someone who has the upside to be, more than just just a starter. Someone that can maybe have that Pro Bowl, future. Just really the one thing that I have is just his tackling security, be a little bit better at it, and then increase the pad level. It'll help him a lot more in terms of the tackling, as well as getting off blocks a little bit, just kind of standing upright, kind of maybe can lose his balance a little bit. But all said and done, I do really think Newton's got he's another guy that can come in and be a pretty quick impact.
Yeah, I like Newton a lot. When I was actually watching him, I was starting to question if I'd have him 1 or Byron Murphy. How the grades came out, I did have Murphy 1, Newton 2. I do have a first round grade on Johnny Newton, and it would play out to be probably like top 24 based on his grade. But I mean, I think that he's very similar to Byron Murphy, a little larger, obviously, like you were mentioning, but still not a massive guy. I think Murphy's a little bit more talented when it comes to his pure athleticism and then his usage of his hands. But Johnny Newton, I think he is a little bit better than Byron Murphy when it comes to actually his pass rush moveset thus far. I mean, I saw him doing jump cuts and spin moves, which is absolutely crazy for an interior defensive lineman at this level of his game. So I loved to see the different types of creativeness he was coming up with when it came to actually getting to the passer. I think he also does a really nice job on designed runs where he has to kind of get over and sniff out the different type of movement that the offensive line is showing him. He did a nice job diagnosing that, but similar to Byron Murphy, when it comes to actually in the run game, versing a double team, using his anchor, because of his smaller stature, he's not going to be able to hold up as well there. These guys are both true 3 techniques, in my opinion, guys that you want to be kind of that change of pace guy where they can come in and rush the passer early on in their career at least, and then once they start to round out their game a little bit more, they can be every down players and just be that true number 1 D tackle in your on your defensive line there. But you are going to need bigger guys to fill up those holes, and I think Texas did that great. And we'll probably talk about Byron Murphy's teammate by the end of this episode.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, go and double check, make sure. Yeah, but nonetheless, let's keep her rolling.
Yep. So let's. Unless you have anything else to say on Johnny Newton, we can
no,
third.
No, we're good. I'm pretty comfortable with that conversation there. So, sitting at my number 3 spot, we had a little bit of discussion about him earlier where you wanted to place him. You wanted him as an edge. I mentioned wanting him as a D lineman. So I'm happy that you conceded and let me put him here in the D lineman group. But it is Darius Robinson out of Mizzou. So when you look at his profile, 6'5", 285, that height to weight ratio, maybe that's where you kind of can consider him an edge. And where I kind of view him is more of a true defensive end. So not necessarily someone who's just like a pass rusher, but somebody who has enough pass rush ability. So if I'm using him in my defensive scheme, I'm not really taking him off the defensive line. I'm not really going to have him standing upright a ton. I think he's better having his his hand in the dirt and just kind of provide just kind of generating his power that way. And then if you need to use him on the inside, he can still have success there too. But essentially, the reason I want him in the D line group is because of his just overall versatility. But with all that being said, he really is useful in just about any package. I mean, he can rush the passer, he can defend the run. It's kind of the same story as those the first 2 guys that we talked about, where he's just very well rounded in that aspect. I mean, he does a great job shedding blocks, very consistently. The footwork overall is solid. Could still use a little bit more work, but it's definitely good enough to have success. It's just another guy who I think is pretty well rounded, and if teams want to I guess classify him as an edge, I'll get it, but I would prefer to use him as more of like a D line type guy.
Yeah, for sure. And Darius Robinson, he comes in at my number 4 when it comes to the defensive line class. I actually have him as a 3rd round grade. I know a lot of people are big fans of him. I've even seen him slide into the 1st round, which fair enough, because he was originally a defensive tackle, switched to more of your defensive edge /4 technique this past year with Missouri, and he really did a nice job improving his pass rush moveset very quickly. I mean, this is a guy who didn't have much early on in his career, but when it comes to his swim move and bull rush, I mean, they're some of the tops in the class right now. So he's done a nice job, and that's only with 1 year experience on or in that defensive end position, which I love. I think he's also does a really nice job in the run game, kind of like you were talking about. He does a great job of diagnosing kind of where those holes are. But I think the bigger issues I had with him was he had some serious tackle issues. He had a 19.4% missed tackle rate this past year. And obviously that's something that can get better. But one thing that can't really get better that kind of scared me away from him is he doesn't have great athleticism. I mean, he's got great size. He really does. But when it comes to his athletic testing, at least at the combine, if you compare him to edges and your defensive ends, he was one of the worst in the class. Now, when you compare him to a D tackle, he's, around that mid to a little bit higher than mid range. which is solid, but coming in at 285, I'm not sure this is a guy you want to be in the middle of your defensive line. So I just have kind of questions on where his potential ceiling could be with that lack of athleticism, the lack of bend around the side. So could I see him being like a Sam Hubbard, where the guy is a fantastic run stuffer and can get some sacks here and there? Yeah, for sure. And I think that's definitely worth a 3rd round grade. But to take that in the 1st round, I'm not sure if I would do that. And obviously not saying that's your grade on him. I think you'd probably have him in the 2nd based on where you had Johnny Newton at. But just kind of combating some of the things I've seen a little bit earlier on.
For sure, yeah. 2nd round guy. If 1st round would be a little rich for me. I know there's gonna be a lot more guys I like for 1st round, but if he does become a Sam Hubbard type, but I think that's certainly in the cards. Then I've got no problem spending a 2nd round pick on that personally. I mean, he's a very just efficient, effective NFLer, and if Robinson can be that same thing, then that ends up being a pretty nice pick.
Yeah, and I think Robinson, he's got that bigger frame as well, and I think he doesn't look as stiff. He's a little bit looser of a player than Sam Hubbard. While both not great athletes, I don't think Robinson is as stiff. So he could be a better Sam Hubbard, and that's solid. I think teams would definitely take that.
For sure.
All right, your number 4. That's right.
Did you say your number 3 already?
No, my number 3 is actually T'Vondre Sweat, which I kind of assume that he's your 4.
He's my number 4 as well, yeah. But I figured you'd announce him as your number 3, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. If you want me to start, then yeah. Like T'Vondre Sweat, he is a massive human being, 6'4", 366. I mean, he's about as big as they come for a D lineman. His weight and of all prospects, it's in the 100 percentile for like historically for defensive linemen. There's not too many guys you're going to see bigger than him. He's an elite run defender. The best in the class. When you're trying to run him on the inside, it's just basically impossible. He swallows up running backs like it's nothing. He demolishes offensive linemen like it's nothing. You got a really hard time blocking him. He's even helpful in pass situations as well. He's got a pretty decent track record for someone of his size to actually be able to go down and bat down some passes at the line. He's someone who just basically all said and done, you don't want him to come off the field because he's going to help make an impact some way, shape, or form. Where the drawback is though, is his athleticism is just very lacking. I mean, a 5'2", 740. His vert and his broad were both 14%, 11% tile. They're just lacking pretty heavily. The explosion in terms of like that athleticism and speed, it's really not there. So getting to the quarterback consistently, that's going to be quite the battle. And can he still do it? Yeah, he definitely can. He wound up with 2 sacks on the year, so it's certainly possible. But it's going to happen more in the plays where something goes completely wrong. Maybe the offensive line completely falls apart. Maybe the quarterback sheds a tackle from an edge, and then so what happens? Just begin there in time to get the sack. That's basically kind of where he's going to come in handy in the pass game. But all said and done, everything else that he has combined together, he's profiling like just a very trusty, reliable run defender who you can also leave on the field in passing situations. He's someone that I think a lot of guys or a lot of teams are going to fall in love with. And even though I have him in the 2nd round, I mean, if someone really believes that much in his ability, I it's a non-zero chance. I think he goes in the 1st round.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of that you said, and I actually have him as an early round 3 pick. But I kind of feel bad because I really like T'Vondre Sweat, and I feel like he shouldn't be that low, but kind of based on what you're talking about, the athleticism isn't necessarily there. And so when it came to his grades for speed and burst and lateral agility, they weren't very high. And so that bumped him down quite a bit. But this guy is a true nose tackle. I saw a clip just today on him when he was at the Senior Bowl, and bro blew up a double team. Like, not just didn't get moved by a double team. No, he blew up a double team. And was able to cause some pressures. So this guy is massive. He's got great strength. And when you're mentioning his athletic testing not being great, it just kind of put in perspective how insane it is that this man gets up and bats balls down from the quarterback. I mean, I saw it in 4 or 5 different plays when I was watching him. So this guy's able to get up off the ground, bat the ball down. He's able to stop the run. Every now and then he's able to use a bull rush to get to the quarterback. So this is a guy I really like and I have a lot of fun with. And I'm really excited to see what he can do at the next level, because I have gotten a much better appreciation of true nose tackles since DJ Reader was on the Bengals. I mean, he did so many things for the Bengals that went unrecognized just because of the position that he played. And I think T'Vondre Sweat's going to be similar. He's going to make big plays, even though he might not get the tackle. He might not be on the stat sheet. I think he's going to be able to disrupt that offensive line enough.
Yeah, I 100% in the same boat there.
All right, let's get to our 5 and 6. I think, no, actually, I was going to say I think we have the same guys, but just different rankings, but that's actually wrong. But we'll hop to your number 5.
So my number 5, dude, what the heck's going on here? I clicked on the wrong freaking tab as I'm trying to shift things over, and it just all went to hell there. So I apologize for this. But
Nice.
Number 5, I have Chris Jenkins out of Michigan, and he comes in as a 3rd-round pick for me. Another kind of similar size profile as the like all the other guys we mentioned, 6'3", 299. You'd like them to be a little bit bigger for sure. And in terms of those measurables, he doesn't have necessarily elite athleticism or anything like that. But he's got enough of an athletic profile. He did a good job in college, playing in the Big Ten. Playing against some tough running opponents, as well as like playing in some different situations, playing against some more when they're going against the SEC teams or going cross conference, playing some bigger opponents, and having to be a little more versatile. Jenkins did an overall pretty solid job. He was a captain of Michigan. He was co-defensive player of the year for them. Someone who's he's just super well rounded across the board. Where things are going to be kind of a problem though is the well rounded is more of like the good category. I think maybe he's got some stronger hands, more than the good. Maybe that's towards the great category, but everything else is just kind of in that good category. Like he can do it all good enough. He's not going to really hurt you going out there in different situations, but there are definitely some other guys that might offer you a little more in a pass situation. Maybe another guy's going to offer you more in a run situation. But if you have Jenkins on your team, and if you're using him, he's not going to be someone who's causing too many mistakes. I just don't expect him to necessarily be, this just tackle machine. Don't expect him to be the sack machine. Just expect him to be a guy that's just a sturdy enough guy in your D line who's going to help you out and not really be too much of a nuisance for you, I guess.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Chris Jenkins comes in at my D tackle 8. I think that we've said this a lot about Michigan players, aside from like the likes of JJ McCarthy, who higher ceiling, not really sure. What happens with him, but a lot of Michigan players was like, this guy's solid and he's a good veteran player. He's a smart player. He was a leader in their locker room. And that just kind of shows the kind of team that Michigan was. They had a lot of veteran leadership, and that helped them get to the next level and win that national championship. And I think Chris Jenkins, very similar, smart veteran player that was a leader for him. I think he does a really nice job against the run. I didn't see him do a ton when it came to rushing the passer. I mean, I think he's got a solid bull rush, but that seems to be pretty standard in your standard, D tackle moveset. I didn't really see much else when it came to that pass rush moveset, but that's not something that's impossible to work on. He can obviously do that. This is a guy who's got kind of more that 3 technique frame. But I felt like he played a little bit more like a nose tackle, which was a little bit interesting, but he does have the strength to do it. So at least he wasn't like a Byron Murphy coming in at 6 foot, 297, not having the strength, getting absolutely bullied, and he tried to play like a nose tackle. So that was nice. But the big thing for me is kind of how you were talking. He just seems like he's, good everywhere. I felt like he was just solid in most places. And so I didn't know if, when it comes to translating at the next level, if he can be anything more than one of your rotational pieces. Now, maybe he's in there, 50, 60% of the game, but I don't think he'll ever be a true, 80, 90% top end D tackle for a team.
And I think, maybe he won't be like your number one D tackle on a team, but if you're taking a guy in the third round, someone who can be out there 60+% of the time, I think that's for a defensive player, especially defensive lineman. I think that's a worthy enough pick, especially if it's a hole that you have. So that's why I'm a little more willing to grade those types of guys a little bit higher than you are.
Yeah, well, let's talk about my number 5. That'll be Michael Hall Jr. out of Ohio State. Obviously, being from Michigan, going to Michigan State, I am not a big fan of rooting for Ohio State players, and I didn't expect it to be any different when it came to Michael Hall Jr., but he surprised me a little bit. He's a younger guy, which I didn't really realize, and then I just thought he was super bursty off the line. Really liked that. I thought he had nice natural pad height and lateral agility. I think that he had a very defined swim move. He wasn't necessarily just this tackle with a plethora of moves, but I thought the swim move specifically, he had a really nice success rate on that. I thought he does a nice job of using his speed to get into the backfield, and did a nice job of actually using like crosses and stunts when it came to confusing that offensive line, which was nice. But one of the big things is Hall's lacking some serious weight and lower body strength as well. So I feel like when it comes to having that true anchor or versing one of your bigger tackles on potentially one of those stunts, I think he can get washed out of the play a little bit. But I think if he adds a little size, especially to that lower body, he adds some more pass rush moves, I think he could be a fun three technique at the next level that could potentially be a starter on a defense.
Yeah, so I've got Mike Hall as my 6, and also in the third round. A lot of what you said I do like. Just his profile, it's kind of a lot like Levi Onwuzurike when he was coming out, and now current Detroit Lion, just that similar type of build, super athletic, someone that in college showed maybe a little more proficiency in terms of beating guys and pass rush moves, but still able to defend the run. So he kind of reminds me of Onwuzurike in a little bit of ways, but. Yeah, the 40 was awesome. A 4.78. That's about as good as you're going to get from somebody who's, classified as a D line, or D tackle, I should say. Someone that you could probably use in some edge situations if you want to, just because of the speed. But yeah, again, I'm going to prefer to keep him on the inside, generally speaking. More, overall, more like all said and done, someone that is just more of kind of like, as you said, the 3 tech is probably fair, but. I do think that there is some upside here based on the age, based on the athletic profile. Just give him a little bit of time to develop, and this could be a guy where that third round pick ends up, maybe looking back on it, it could be a value. But at the same time, maybe he is someone that doesn't have like, I don't know, maybe he doesn't have enough of the classic, D tackle size and traits. Maybe he just kind of falters too. I don't really know 100% sure, but there's enough there to like that warrants taking a chance on him in the third round for sure.
Yeah, and that's where I had him too. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but he was a third round grade for me. Going to my 6th guy, this is going to be Mekhi Wingo out of LSU. He is actually a 4th round grade for me, so it falls off a little bit earlier than per se your rankings do on some of these guys. But Mekhi Wingo's a very interesting one because when you look at his size, you don't think, he's necessarily a D tackle. He's not necessarily an edge because he's only 6 foot 284, which is weird and I don't love. But when I was watching Mason Smith, his teammate, which is the guy that's getting more hype and getting more love in the draft process, I couldn't keep my eyes off Wingo. I felt like he was the one getting a lot more disruption. He was the one getting to the backfield a lot easier. And so this was the guy that kind of caught my eye when it came to that LSU defensive line. So yeah, really weird size, but he's got great burst. I think he's got really good pursuit as well when it comes to his play. I mean, you look at screen passes. I mean, this is going to be one of those guys that is chasing a player down 40 yards because that's just the type of high effort player he is. I think he did a nice job using his athleticism to cause at least some type of disruption in a lot of plays. Maybe it wasn't a sack. Maybe it wasn't a true pressure, but he was doing something that allowed other teammates to get in, or, he was just actually sacking someone. I think he also does a really nice job completing tackles. Chase mentioned earlier on, D tackles tend to have some tough times when it comes to completing tackles, especially guys who are only 6 foot 284. But I thought Wingo did a really nice job actually completing his tackles. But the big boo-boos of his game, his lack of anchor, the lack of change of direction really hurts him, in my opinion. Like, he's got good athleticism when it comes to his kind of straight line, but when it comes to actually change of direction, one-on-one types, he doesn't do a great job when it comes to that. So, I don't know. That's not something you can really change. And so it does scare me that he doesn't have that true change of direction. He doesn't have that natural size. He doesn't have that natural strength. But when it came to actually just getting the job done, he seemed to do it really well on the college level.
I agree with a lot of that analysis, and he comes in at my number 8 with his teammate Mason Smith actually being the number 7, just barely above him. And where my problem lies, as you say, the size, it's a bit of a concern. You're hoping guys with that size are a little more a little more athletic on the outside. In terms of his, I don't know if that's the right word I want to use, but he does have like the athleticism, he can burn. He has a really good burst. So, I don't really mean it that way, but I think you know what I'm trying to get at here. I just can't phrase it the proper way. If he developed his abilities enough, and if he lost weight, maybe that would help, and like he could be, like a 6 foot 270 pound edge guy. I think it might hurt his game, but if somehow he could do that and it can make him better, then I think that might be where he makes his money more. But just kind of where he's at now, like betting on the athleticism, betting on the work ethic, it's certainly not a bad thing. Taking a shot on a guy like him in the 4th round just because he did make impact, at the at the college level. Another guy who profiles similar to Levi Owens-Enrique just kind of reminds me a little bit in terms of that build, like in terms of that whole profile in general. I should say, excuse me. It's worth taking a shot on, but is he going to be your dude right off the bat? No, I highly doubt it. Is he someone that can get there over time? Yeah, maybe. I don't think it's impossible, but I think you just got to be patient and you got to figure out the right ways to use him just based on where his current skill set is and what his size profile is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he even reminded me a little bit of Boogie Basham, who came out, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. I think he went to the Bills originally, coming out of Colorado. It was a guy who he mainly played that defensive end position. Not the true stand-up edge, but your defensive end position in college. I think Wingo could potentially be that at the next level. But obviously he played more interior defensive tackle when it came to the college game. But Boogie Basham, he got the job done at Colorado, but he was a little bit stiffer of a player. He didn't have the freaky athleticism, and I think Mekhi Wingo could potentially be that as well. So who knows? It's a guy to watch when we get to day 3 of the draft, and potentially he lands on your team, and that's where you come to the show and go, okay, what are we getting ourselves into? And I think we kind of laid it out there for you there. But that's it. Chase, any thoughts on the class or anyone else before we head out?
I mean, the only thing I'll say is I mentioned very briefly that Mason Smith is above Mekhi Wingo, and the reason I have him there is it's mostly kind of like taking a chance on a guy, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Former high end recruit. He's got a great size profile, and the production isn't necessarily in college. Maybe the development's not fully there. But a lot of that is because of an injury past, like an injury history, I should say, excuse me, where 2 seasons cut short. I mean, 2 seasons worth of practices were cut short, 2 seasons worth of game experience all cut short. But in terms of what he was coming out as as a college prospect, in terms of everything else that he has of the raw traits, it's worth taking a shot on. It's definitely worth taking a shot on. Day 3 would be a great value for somebody. Someone takes him in the 3rd round. I mean, so be it. But I think that if you're going to grab him on day 3, it's a guy that you can really hope has a potential burst with a little bit more coaching, a little bit more experience, just because he wasn't able to get enough of it in college.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the Bengals took him day 3, I'd be pumped. Even if a team goes out and takes him in the 3rd round, it's a little rich. But if you're that confident in being able to develop a guy, I mean, he's only 21. He's got the perfect size at 6'5", 306. This is a guy who can be a really good 3 technique just based on his size. So if someone's confident that they can develop him, he could potentially turn out to be a top 3 defensive tackle in the class just because of kind of the raw ability there.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the show. I want to thank you so much for coming out and giving it a listen. Next week, we've got, I think, edge rushers, so that should be a good one. Stay tuned for that. If you want to stay up to date with all that we do, you can follow us on Twitter at WNP Sports Pod. That's, again, on Twitter at WNP Sports Pod. If you are listening on YouTube, if you could please give us a like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to turn on notifications, and let us know down in the comments below who's your top defensive tackle, as well as what are your thoughts on the new NFL rules. Really interested to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. If you are listening on a podcast platform, if you could please give us a follow and a 5-star rating, we'd absolutely love you for it. Thanks so much for coming out, and as always, we're not professionals.